He replaced me with someone younger. She told me everything.
I need you to stay with me for the next 30 minutes, because what I'm about to tell you is the kind of story that sounds like it was written for a movie, but every single word of it is real. My name is Diana. I'm 41 years old. I live in Chicago, Illinois. And 14 months ago, I was sitting in a Starbucks on Michigan Avenue when a woman I had never met sat down across from me, put her phone on the table and said, "My name is Kayla. I'm 27, and I think we need to talk about Marcus Webb." Marcus Webb, my husband of 9 years, the man who had told me 3 months earlier that he needed space to figure himself out. The man who had quietly moved out of our Lincoln Park townhouse while I was at my sister's birthday dinner. The man who had handed me divorce papers via a courier on a Tuesday morning in November. I didn't know Kayla existed. I didn't know what she knew. I didn't know that the next 45 minutes of conversation in that Starbucks would hand me everything I needed to dismantle the most important deal of Marcus Webb's career. But here's the thing about men who underestimate women. They tend to do it twice.
If you've ever been replaced, discarded, or made to feel like you were too much and not enough at the same time, this one is for you. Like and subscribe if you want more stories like this, because what happens next? Even I couldn't have planned it better. Let me tell you about Marcus. I met him at a charity fundraiser in downtown Chicago in the fall of 2013. He was 34, already a partner at a mid-sized investment firm called Harwick Capital. Tall, well-dressed, the kind of man who knew exactly how to hold a room. He had the specific confidence of someone who had been told he was exceptional for so long that he'd stopped questioning it. I was 30 at the time, working as a senior brand strategist at a marketing consultancy. I had my own clients, my own income, my own apartment on the North Side. I was not looking for someone to complete me. I was looking for a partner. Marcus seemed like that. For a long time, he seemed exactly like that. We dated for 2 years before he proposed, moved in together, bought the Lincoln Park townhouse, built the kind of life that looks perfect from the outside. Dinner parties, weekend trips, a golden retriever named Franklin, a shared calendar that ran like a corporate operation. We were efficient, high-functioning, and, I believed, genuinely happy. What I didn't see, or didn't let myself see, was the slow erosion. It started around year 5. Small things at first. Comments about my intensity at work. Subtle suggestions that maybe I was too focused on my career, too opinionated in social situations, too direct with his colleagues at firm events. "You don't have to be the smartest person in the room every time, Di," he said once, laughing like it was affectionate. I laughed too. I shouldn't have. By year 7, I had unconsciously made myself smaller. Talked less at his work events, deferred to him more in conversations, stopped pushing back when he dismissed my observations about his business. I told myself this was compromise. It wasn't. It was disappearing. And here's what I know now that I didn't know then. Marcus needed me smaller because he was getting bigger. Harwick Capital had landed a massive new institutional client in 2019, and Marcus had been the lead on the acquisition. His profile was rising. His ego was outpacing his integrity. And somewhere in that trajectory, he had started looking around. But I didn't know any of that yet. What I knew was this. In October of last year, Marcus came home from a work trip to New York looking like a man who had made a decision. He was calm in a way that felt rehearsed. He sat me down at our kitchen table, the one we had picked out together at a furniture store in the West Loop, the one Franklin used to sleep under, and he told me he needed space. Not a separation, not a conversation. Space. Like I was a room he needed to air out. I asked him if there was someone else. He said no. He looked me in the eyes and he said no. He was lying, but I didn't know that yet either. If you've ever been handed a lie that clean, that practiced, drop A in the comments. Because what came next? I was not prepared. The courier arrived at 9:14 on a Tuesday morning in November. I know the exact time because I had just gotten off a work call and my laptop was still open, the time visible in the corner of the screen. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, formal. My name was typed on the front in a font I didn't recognize. I signed for it without thinking. Inside were 32 pages of divorce paperwork, prepared by a law firm I had never heard of. Harwick Capital's retained counsel, I would later learn. Marcus had used his firm's lawyers to divorce his wife. I sat on the floor of our entryway for 20 minutes. Franklin put his head in my lap. I didn't cry. I felt something stranger than crying, a kind of white noise shock that comes when something you knew was coming still lands like something you never saw. He had been planning this, the law firm, the paperwork, the timing. None of this was spontaneous. This had been organized. While I was making dinner and walking Franklin and attending his firm's holiday party in December and smiling at his colleagues, he had been building an exit strategy. I called my sister. Then I called the lawyer. My lawyer, a woman named Patricia Hendricks, who had been doing family law in Chicago for 22 years, looked at the paperwork and said, "He moved fast. That usually means he wants this done before something changes." I asked her what would change. She said, "That's what we need to find out." Over the next 6 weeks, I focused on the divorce, the townhouse, the joint accounts, the assets. Marcus was cooperative in the cold, efficient way of someone who wants a transaction completed. We communicated through our lawyers. The few times I saw him in person, he was polite and distant, like I was a colleague he'd had a mild disagreement with, not a woman he'd spent 9 years sleeping next to. I had not yet asked myself the question I should have been asking. Who is she? Because there was a she. I felt it the way you feel weather changing. Not seeing it yet, but sensing the pressure drop. A wife knows. We always know. We just don't always let ourselves know that we know. And then, on a Wednesday afternoon in January, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "My name is Kayla Simmons. I know this is strange, but I think we need to meet. It's about Marcus Webb. I have information that might be important to you." I stared at that message for a long time. Then I typed, "Saturday, 10 a.m., Starbucks on Michigan Avenue." I didn't sleep well that Friday night, but I showed up. Because here's what I've learned. The information you're most afraid of is usually the information you most need. Type ready if you would have shown up too. She was already there when I arrived. 27 years old, dark hair, a nervous energy she was trying to contain. She had a coffee she wasn't drinking, and her phone was face up on the table, which I noticed because it was the posture of someone who might need to leave quickly. I sat down. We looked at each other. There was a strange intimacy to it. Two women connected by the same man, meeting for the first time, both of us trying to figure out what the other one knew. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Tell me," I said. So she did. Kayla was an analyst at Harwick Capital, had been for 18 months. She was smart, ambitious, exactly the kind of person a firm like Harwick recruited. Top of her class, relentless work ethic, desperate to prove herself in an industry that was still overwhelmingly male. Marcus had been her mentor, assigned by the firm, official, above board, documented. And then, it hadn't been. "It started about a year ago," she said, hands wrapped around her coffee cup. "Dinners after late nights, texts that started work-related and stopped being work-related. I knew it was wrong. I knew about you. But he told me—" She stopped, looked at the table. "He told me you were separated, that the marriage had been over for years, that you were both just waiting for the right time." I felt something cold move through me. Not surprise, recognition. "He told you I knew," I said. She nodded. "He said you'd agreed it was better this way, that you were both moving on." While I was making dinner and walking Franklin and attending his firm's holiday party, while I was doing all of that, Marcus had been telling a 26-year-old woman that his marriage was already over, that I had agreed, that it was mutual. "When did you find out that wasn't true?" I asked. She looked up. 3 weeks ago. He told me to stop contacting him at work, said I was becoming a liability, said he needed to protect his reputation during the divorce proceedings. A pause. Same way he protected it when I started asking questions about the Meridian account. And there it was, the thing I hadn't known I was waiting for. "What's the Meridian account?" I asked. Kayla picked up her phone, slid it across the table. I looked at the screen, and everything changed. Don't go anywhere, because what was on that phone? That's where this story becomes something else entirely. The Meridian account was Harwick Capital's biggest deal in 5 years. Meridian Institutional Partners, a $2.4 billion pension fund based in Minneapolis, had been courted by half a dozen Chicago investment firms for 2 years. Landing them would mean a management contract worth an estimated $18 million annually. It was, by any measure, the deal of Marcus's career. He had been the lead for 18 months. The signing was scheduled for February 14th, 6 weeks away. What Kayla showed me on her phone was a series of internal communications she had accessed in her role as a senior analyst on the Meridian account. Emails, meeting notes, a document trail that told a very specific story. Marcus had misrepresented Harwick's fund performance data to the Meridian team. Not dramatically, not fabricated numbers, nothing that obvious. Something subtler and more deliberate. Selectively presented historical returns, cherry-picked comparison periods, omitted underperformance data from 3 specific quarters in 2021 and 2022. On paper, the presentation looked compliant. In practice, it was designed to mislead. Kayla had flagged it internally 4 weeks earlier. Quietly, through the proper channel, a memo to the firm's compliance officer. The compliance officer had forwarded it to the managing partners. The managing partners had forwarded it to Marcus. Marcus had called Kayla into his office and told her she had misread the data, that her analysis was incorrect, that if she valued her career at Harwick, she would withdraw the memo. She had withdrawn it. She had been 26 years old and terrified. But she had kept copies of everything. "Why are you bringing this to me?" I asked. I kept my voice level. My heart was not level. "Because he's about to close a deal built on false information," she said. "And because Meridian's money isn't his money. It's pension money. Teachers, municipal workers, people who can't afford to lose it." She looked at me steadily. "And because he did to me what he did to you. He used me and then discarded me when I became inconvenient. I'm done protecting him." I sat with that for a moment. A pension fund, teachers and municipal workers, $2.4 billion. And Marcus, 6 weeks from the signing, thinking he had neutralized every threat. He had not accounted for 2 women in a Starbucks on Michigan Avenue. I called Patricia Hendricks that afternoon. I told her I needed to speak with her about something beyond the divorce, something that might involve securities regulations. She was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "Come in Monday morning and bring everything." Type karma if you saw where this was going. Let me be clear about something. What I did next was not revenge. Revenge is emotional and imprecise. What I did was precise. It was documented, it was legal, and it was correct. There is a difference between tearing something down because you're angry and dismantling something because it should not stand. Marcus had misrepresented fund performance data to a prospective institutional client. That is a securities violation. It falls under the jurisdiction of the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, FINRA, and potentially the Securities and Exchange Commission. Kayla's documentation was detailed, time-stamped, and internally sourced. Patricia connected me with a securities attorney named David Choi. David reviewed Kayla's materials over a weekend and came back to us on Monday with 4 words. "This is very serious." We had 2 options. File a formal complaint with FINRA, which would trigger an investigation that could take months and might or might not affect the February 14th signing. Or contact Meridian Institutional Partners directly, not with accusations, but with a request that they conduct their own due diligence review on the specific data points Kayla had identified before signing. David was careful. "We don't make accusations," he said. "We provide information and let the client decide." He paused. "But the information we provide needs to be accurate and documented. Is it?" He looked at Kayla. "Every word," she said. We filed a formal FINRA complaint on January 28th. It was thorough, documented, and supported by Kayla's internal communications and her own analysis of the fund performance data. David also drafted a letter, carefully worded, legally precise, to Meridian's board of directors, requesting that they review 3 specific data points in Harwick's pitch materials before proceeding with the contract. The letter was sent on February 1st, 13 days before the signing. I want to pause here because I know what some of you are thinking. Were you doing this for the right reasons? Was this about justice? Or was this about Marcus? Honestly, both. I'm not going to pretend it wasn't. But here's what I know. The right action can come from a complicated place and still be the right action. Pension money belonging to teachers and municipal workers should not be managed by a firm that misrepresented its performance data to get the contract. That is true regardless of whether I was angry. I was angry. And I was right. Those two things coexisted just fine. February 3rd. Marcus called me for the first time since the divorce papers. He never called me. We communicated through lawyers. When my phone lit up with his name, I knew Meridian had made contact with Harwick. I let it go to voicemail. I didn't listen to the message until the next morning. 47 seconds. His voice was controlled, but had something underneath it I had never heard before. Not anger, fear. I saved the voicemail. Then I forwarded it to Patricia. The Meridian signing did not happen on February 14th. Meridian's board had engaged an independent compliance firm to review Harwick's pitch materials following our letter. The review took 11 days. On February 12th, Meridian notified Harwick Capital that they were suspending the signing, pending the outcome of the review. I found out from David Choi. He called me on a Thursday afternoon, his voice professionally neutral in the way of lawyers delivering significant news. "Meridian has suspended," he said. "The review is ongoing. I don't know the timeline." I sat in my car in the parking garage of my office building for a few minutes after the call ended. Franklin was at home. My sister was waiting for me to call her back. The city hummed outside the concrete walls. I thought about Marcus sitting in his corner office at Harwick, the deal he had been building for 18 months dissolving in real time, and I felt, not triumph exactly, something quieter, the specific satisfaction of a thing being what it actually is, finally out in the open. The FINRA investigation was opened in early March. I can't discuss the details of an ongoing regulatory matter. What I can tell you is that Marcus Webb is no longer a partner at Harwick Capital. He resigned in mid-March, 2 weeks after the investigation became known internally. The firm issued a statement about leadership transitions. Nobody in the industry was fooled. The Meridian deal did not close with Harwick. Meridian engaged a different firm in April. Kayla left Harwick Capital in February. She had already been offered a position at another firm, one that, it turned out, had been trying to recruit her for months before any of this happened. She is, by all accounts, doing extremely well. We have coffee occasionally. She is not the woman I feared when I first received her text message. She is someone who made a mistake, recognized it, and chose something harder than silence. I have some respect for that. My divorce was finalized in April. The settlement was fair. Patricia Hendricks is very good at her job. The townhouse was sold. Franklin stayed with me, which was never in question because Marcus was allergic to dogs and had been living with Franklin for 9 years purely out of tolerance, which I should have taken as a sign much earlier. I moved into an apartment in the West Loop in May. 12th floor, east-facing windows, morning light that is almost aggressive in its cheerfulness. I bought furniture that is entirely mine. I planted herbs on the kitchen windowsill, even though I am a mediocre cook and have killed 2 basil plants already. I am working on the third. Type yes in the comments if you would have done the same thing. And if someone in your life needs to hear this story, share it with them. Because the next part is what I want you to really hear. People ask me if I regret it. The FINRA complaint, the letter to Meridian, the whole thing. No, I don't. Not because it felt good, though parts of it did, I'm not going to pretend otherwise, but because it was correct. A pension fund managed by someone willing to misrepresent data to win a contract is a pension fund at risk. Teachers, municipal workers, people who spent 30 years paying into a system that was supposed to protect them. I would make the same choice again. But here's what I want to talk about, because it's the thing I think about most. I spent 9 years making myself smaller for a man who was going to discard me anyway. Not because I wasn't enough. I was always enough. But because Marcus needed someone who wouldn't notice things, someone who wouldn't ask questions, someone who would laugh when he said, "You don't have to be the smartest person in the room," and take it as affection rather than instruction. I was that person for too long. And I want to be very clear, that is not my fault. Manipulation is slow. It works because it happens in increments too small to name in the moment. You don't notice yourself disappearing. You just look up one day and realize you're much further from yourself than you meant to get. What saved me, and I mean that literally, was staying competent, staying employed, maintaining my own relationships, my own income, my own sense of what I knew to be true. Marcus could take the marriage. He could not take 20 years of professional expertise and the ability to recognize a securities violation when Kayla put one on a table in front of me. He replaced me with someone younger. What he didn't account for was that the someone younger would eventually sit across from me in a Starbucks and hand me everything. People who underestimate women have a specific blind spot. They assume that the women they've discarded will be too broken, too angry, or too small to be dangerous. They forget that being underestimated is actually a significant strategic advantage. I was underestimated for 9 years. I used it exactly once. It was enough. If you're in a version of this right now, if you're in the process of being replaced, discarded, or made to feel like you're too much or not enough, I need you to hear this. Stay competent. Stay employed. Keep your own accounts, your own friendships, your own lawyer if it comes to that. Not because you're planning anything, just because you deserve to have resources that are yours. And pay attention. The Kaylas of the world exist. The information exists. The truth has a way of wanting to be known. It found me in a Starbucks on a Saturday morning in January. I almost didn't show up. I'm very glad I did. It's October now. 14 months since Marcus handed me divorce papers via courier. Franklin is asleep on the couch behind me as I write this, which he is absolutely not allowed to do, and which I have completely stopped enforcing, because it turns out having a dog on the couch is actually fine, and rules about furniture are something you make when you live with someone who doesn't like dogs. My sister came for dinner last week. We sat on my balcony with wine and the Chicago skyline doing what it does in October, that specific blue-gray that makes the city look like it means it. We talked about everything except Marcus, which meant we talked about everything that mattered. She told me I seemed like myself again. I said I think I'm more myself than I've been in years. She said that tracks. I spoke at a professional development event for women in marketing last month. Someone asked me afterward what advice I would give to women in relationships with people who make them feel small. I said, document everything, keep your own money, and never mistake someone's need to diminish you for evidence that you are actually small. She wrote it down. I hope she uses it. Kayla texted me last week. A new deal she's leading at her firm. She wanted to share it with someone who would understand what it meant. I told her I was proud of her. I meant it. And Marcus? I don't know exactly where he is. I know he left Chicago. I know he's no longer at Harwick. Beyond that, he's not my story anymore. He was the chapter where I got small. This is the chapter where I got back to full size. If this story meant something to you, if it made you think about someone in your life, or something you've been tolerating, or a door you've been afraid to open, leave me a comment. Tell me where you are in your story. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe. I'll be here every week. My name is Diana. I'm 41 years old. I live in Chicago, and I am nobody's footnote.